Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the reports that Health Secretary Steve Barclay has told unions that he will fight for a better pay award for NHS staff if they can help him make an argument to the Treasury on the basis of investment. We know that Barclay has said this, but do we know that he actually means it? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, report in the Observer today, talking about a cabinet split, says that Barclay has privately told unions that if they can help him make the case to the Treasury and Number 10 for more money, that he'll be on their side. He said he's willing to seek better pay, including for this year, this isn't just about next year, for all NHS staff, with the exception of doctors. The report says that journalists approached officials who confirmed that Barclay had said this to unions in meetings. And it certainly strikes a very different tone. Before Christmas, the Health Secretary was refusing to even talk about pay. He was willing to meet them, but not talk about pay, in which case, well, what's to talk about? Now he's willing to work with the unions to get a better pay offer. I am, however, a little cynical of this. It's entirely possible that Barclay has actually changed his tune. If you think about where we are with the NHS strikes, it's now clear that the public are on the side of the nurses in particular. I've talked before about how even Tory voters are split on the issue there, which means there's a large number of Tory voters, and you would imagine mostly swing voters who are on the side of the nurses. Well, this is a problem for the government, because that is the section of the public that actually can steer government behaviour, by the way, the ones who do or may vote Tory. A month ago, the government may have imagined that the public support for nurses would fall once the strikes actually began. Sunak and Barclay knew that their client media would savage striking NHS workers, so they dutifully did. They planned to just sit it out, wait for the public to be flooded with articles of the people who died waiting for medical care on the days of the strikes, from a media who never report on the deaths of people waiting for medical care on the days when there aren't strikes. They thought the public would turn against NHS staff, but they haven't. In fact, so emboldened is the Royal College of Nursing with the sustained public support, strike action in the coming weeks is going to become even more widespread if the government do not start negotiating in good faith. Even before the strikes, there were a number of Tory MPs calling for Sunak to do more for nurses at least. They were not sure that the public were going to turn against the NHS. And those calls from within the parliamentary party, they've not died down. There isn't a group, sure enough, there isn't a group of Tory MPs going to Sunak, look, this isn't good enough, you're going to get us into trouble, sort it out. But individuals are still publicly saying he needs to do more. Sunak appeared to signal a small climb down, only a small one, in saying that if ministers wanted to improve pay offers, they can do, but they'll have to do it from existing budgets. There'll be no more money. Not a valuable change of policy, because what that means, of course, is cutting services. And let's be clear about what that means. I mean, cutting services that are already stretched. That means cutting staff and blaming it on the greed of nurses. I'm not sure that strategy is going to work, but, that may be what he wants to try. But against this background of continued support for NHS staff, it is entirely possible that Steve Barclay has about-faced. Maybe he's decided he's going to suffer personal reputational damage in public if he continues to fly in the face of what that public want, which is that nurses be able to eat and heat their homes as a bare minimum reward for their hard work. But then Steve Barclay's in a very safe seat, so it won't be fears for his personal position as an MP he'll be worried about. It may be for the wider party. But there is a genuine possibility that Barclay has seen the way the wind is blowing, decided that Hunt and Sunak have got this wrong, that the government is only storing up trouble for itself later if it doesn't do something now. There is another possibility there. See, the article reported that Barclay told unions to help him convince Sunak and Hunt that more money would stop the rapid exodus of NHS staff to other jobs. This is what made me particularly cynical about this offer from Barclay. So I've got a couple of things to say about this. First, there are lots of reasons for NHS staff to be deserting the service right now. In general, there are always various reasons for staff leaving a workplace. It's not always pay, it could be the conditions. You know, and where you've got severe staff shortages, the conditions will always deteriorate for those who remain because they have to pick up the slack. The work doesn't get any lighter for staff in the NHS when their colleagues leave and are not replaced. And it's especially hard for NHS staff because that stretch in resources results in people, real people, not getting the care they should when they really need it. You know, they could be failing to recover quickly or properly or at all. But pay is always going to be a factor. And it is also the factor which Tories understand well enough. For most of them, everything ultimately comes down to money. I grew up with Conservatives. When it comes to careers, it doesn't matter whether you enjoy it or not, you get value from it. Oh, does it match your skills? That's an alien concept to Conservatives. When you're choosing a career, which one pays you the most? Of your options, which pays the most? That's it. Earning potential is the only consideration. The idea that you would need to make the case that improving pay would stop the exodus of NHS staff to a Tory is laughable. They automatically believe it will. They're all about the market forces and the monetary rewards. If there's one thing you never have to spend time persuading a Conservative of, it's that making a job pay better will make it more attractive. My second point is that it is very obvious that the Tories want this exodus from the NHS. It's not an incidental consequence of their boneheaded policies. There are some unintended consequences of their boneheaded policies. This is not one of them. The Tory media are pushing the narrative that the NHS has failed and needs replacing. They think they're in the end game here. This is not Labour's reforms we're talking about here. You know, the Tory media are openly talking about getting rid of the NHS, not changing it into something else, just getting rid of it and replacing it with a completely different system. They've been doing their bit in trying to persuade the public that the NHS, that they're trying to say, because they know the public love the NHS. So they try and say, oh, you know, but it was great in the 20th century. Oh, yeah, you were absolutely right to appreciate it then. But, you know, it's no longer fit for the modern world. In tandem, the Conservative government has spent over a decade giving the media the ammunition they need in the form of undermining the NHS. Mostly as a direct result of underfunding, but other things as well. You know, the Tories say they put in record sums into the NHS. They're trying to make out it's this leaky bucket. You keep putting more and more in, it just drains away. No, they're not. There are two fiddles they carry out to create the illusion. First of all, they compare raw sums now with the past, as if inflation isn't a thing. In real terms, NHS funding has gone down dramatically since Labour left office. Dramatically. They've cut funding in real terms. GDP terms as well, don't matter how you measure it, it's gone down. The second fiddle is by combining NHS funding with private healthcare funding. Now, the government, with its healthcare budget, funds both the NHS and private healthcare, which are not the same thing. But it merges the funding into a single figure instead of separating them out. Not that it's just underfunding that they used to stop the NHS working properly. They broke up the NHS into smaller, less efficient parts, unconnected parts. They've put people with private healthcare interests in charge of NHS budget decisions in the NHS trusts. They've allowed hospital buildings to fall into disrepair. They've systematically lowered people's standard of living, making illness and injury more likely in the population to increase the burden on the health service. They've reduced the number of NHS employed in the service. This collapse of the NHS isn't sudden. It's not something that just happened with the pandemic either. It's been happening for years. Before COVID, we had at least 2 years of reports of patients being left in corridors, not always even on a trolley. This has been going on for a very long time indeed, across 5 different Tory prime ministers now. So when Steve Barclay suggests that if he could just persuade Sunak and Hunt that better pay would prevent NHS staff leaving the service in record numbers, I just see that as a sick joke. It's what makes me worry that Barclay's not changed his position at all. He's just changed his tactics. He hasn't gone from not talking at all to the unions to wanting to actually work with them. I think he's just shifting his tactics from refusing to talk to the unions, which is obviously going down very badly with the public, to pretending to be on their side, pretending to work with them. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, although I don't know that it actually makes any difference, because at the end of the day, Barclay has his budget. In order to get the extra funding needed for pay rises without cutting other services, which, as I say, means basically shrinking the size of the workforce, he needs Sunak and Hunt on board. And they are worried that giving in to one group of workers means that the other public sector workers will demand that they be allowed to afford food more strongly. Then there's another bit to the report that Barclay, as well as saying about, to the unions, well, help me make the better case for a pay award, not only to stop the exodus, but to improve efficiency. Oh, if we can convince Jeremy Hunt that it'll improve efficiency, he might be all for it. Now, this word efficiency has come up before. Let me just say to a Tory, efficiency doesn't mean what it does to you or I. It doesn't mean doing more with your resources. Doesn't mean more productivity with your resources. It means having fewer resources. It means cutting the resources and just hoping that the productivity stays the same. The Tory meaning of efficiency is always, 100% of the time, job cuts. This was their angle last week, and I suspect will remain their angle unless public opinion forces them into a U-turn. It will be, you can have better pay. We will pay you more. If that comes as a result of sharing out the salaries of staff leaving the service and you do their work on top of your own. We don't even try to recruit replacements. You do the extra work. That's what it will mean. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.